Quest 64, also known in Europe and Australia as Holy Magic Century, and L-Tail Monsters in New Zealand. Well, L-Tail Monsters in Japan. New Zealand was also known as Holy Magic Century. This was a role-playing game developed for the Nintendo 64 by the company Imagineer. First released in America and then released all other places in subsequent time. This was the first role-playing video game released for the Nintendo 64 in North America. It was a moderate success at the time, but unfortunately, it didn't necessarily get a sequel, even though one was in the planning stages. It did, however, get a Game Boy demake, which actually impressed me. I actually first thought the demake was a sequel, but no, it was actually a retelling of the first one, with some things a little more fleshed out. Now, this game had a remarkably easy storyline to fill. I mean, it was first on the system, at least in America. So we didn't necessarily know how things were going to play out with this system, with a role-play game. This set the bar, albeit not a high bar. So this was set in a fantastic land known as, well, a medieval type world known as Keltland. It's also said to resemble Ireland somewhat. Hence why I was putting on the Celtic accents when I was playing the game. Now, the story revolves around a young apprentice named Brian, whose hair sort of reminds you of a quail. There's that bob thicken up. Now, his father, who was also a mage, left on a quest. The quest was to find a thief of a book called the L-Tail Book. This is a very dangerous book, because apparently it was linked to some chaos that happened several years ago. And so, because it was stolen, Brian's father, Bartholomew, went out on a quest to get the book back, or at least catch the thief. However, pretty much since the theft, some miscreants have been causing chaos. So Brian must now go through, find his father, go on this quest to find his father. In the meantime, he's going to be facing off against these dangerous miscreants. We'll also meet the people of the kingdoms. There are about 3 of them in this land. The first one is, of course, the beautiful... Well, our quest actually starts in Melrose City. It's not much of a city. More like a town, if you ask me. But that's where the monastery is. And along the way, you'll find places where you can save, basically inns where you can rest. A majority of the inns, you will come across a figure named Shannon. And she will show up many times throughout this game. Makes me wonder how she gets past us as we're going along. And she will have some helpful advice linked to the quest at hand. So, we leave, of course, our little town of Melroad and go to Dundoran. That's where the castle is, and the castle is the home. It's known as the town of pottery. So these are craftsmen in this kingdom, pretty much. And of course, we go to the castle, and we're going to meet with the king there. I forget what his name is now. And I have the guide in front of me to help me answer these questions. But he is going to tell the king, King Scottford, and his daughter also lives in the castle, Flora. They are going to tell you that one of the gems you need, which was in their care, has been stolen. That's right. The Earth orb has been stolen. Stolen by a thief named Sovereign. This is our first battle with this nutcase. Of course, we have to beat him so that we can now travel through the forest. At least pass through the forest, because he now controls the forest and controls the gate to continue on in our quest. Now, a good portion of your battles are gonna be magic in this game. And this had a relatively clever, unique, relatively clever, unique system. Since it dealt with the elements, earth, wind, fire, water, none of this heart stuff, you had to either your spells were up to 3 parts, and each element you use, it costs a spell point, a magic point. Fire, wind, earth, water. Fire tends to be more of a attacking. It's more of an attack stuff. Well, it's got most of your attack magic in it. You start off with, of course, the fireball, which you can build up to level 3. You can, with the help of wind magic, wind element, you can create a homing arrow, which goes up to level 2. Hot steam, which is more or less a sort of more like a close range weapon. And the power staff, which powers up your staff. Earth magic. Wind is more movement based, water is more healing, and earth is more defense. And of course, like with your level 3, you get stuff like compression, which will shrink an enemy if successful. Fire pillar, fire bomb, something called extinction, magma ball, vampire's touch, which if you have that on your staff and hit your enemy, you get health back. And magma rock. Your earth magic, which is sometimes a little more defense, but you start with a rock, which gets bigger the more you build it up. Yeah, but attack with like rolling rock. You have a spell called weakness, which can weaken your enemies, and spirit armor, which can up your defense. Which, of course, then you'd have level 3, where you can create magic barrier, which is going to be one of your best friends in the later game. Confusion, avalanche, another fantastic spell. Of course, let's see. We also have weaken all, a rock shower, not as good as avalanche in my opinion. Let's see. We got magnet rock, which is also a very unique, good spell to have. Now, I said your water-based spells are more your defense and healing. Well, more healing. Because, yes, with water, you got water pillar. You can also find out information about your enemies with Soul Searcher. Escape from a dungeon or a battle with exit and its higher based one return. And healing. And you also have higher levels like Ice Wall, Drain Magic, Escape, Ice Knife, Walking Water, Draining Magic. Yeah, I think I mentioned that. Now, of course, you have also Wind, which you get your Wind Cutter and, really build it up so you can launch something even more powerful. Restriction, where you can hold someone still, an enemy still. Evade, which increases your running room. Silence, which silence, of course, is an enemy. You have a large cutter, ultimate wind, slow enemy, a wind bomb, cyclone, wind walk, whatever that is. I never used it myself. But these are all the magic spells you gain, and as you find spirits throughout the game, they raise your ability and give you more spells to access as you play. You just start with the basics. Now, of course, once you dispose of Salvarang and get the Earth Orb, you're allowed to keep it, because it may come in useful on your quest. You head through Dundaran Flats, making a side trip to Glencoe Forest, which is a very high level area, but it's good to get spirits, and learn something about the area. It's also the output area for another area called the Blue Cave. But you can't access Blue Cave until you secure the Wind Jade. And of course, once you get through and all the Dundara area, the Dundara Flats, you take a boat to another area, which is the Laurapool Limeland area. Well, Laurapool first, because something causes the boat to stop moving. So that is the area that you end up in called West Karma. Now, of course, you find the town called Laurapool, which is having some issues. But you can't do anything in there until you get the Wind Jade, so you have to go to Norwood. But the apparent easy way to Norwood is blocked off for some reason. The bridge is busted. Of course, it's caused by somebody in the forest. Now, luckily, there is another way to it through the dangerous coal hazard, which, after you travel through it, you get to Normoon, the town of Normoon, and that's not an easy area to go through. At least there's some areas where they don't allow attacks, so you can build up some of your powers back up. And trust me, you want to save, stop at every inn and save, because if you die anywhere, you go back to the last inn you saved at. Which means if you manage to go through this game and get close to the end and die, you're right back to the beginning. But of course, it does encourage you to, you can't save often just at an inn. And of course, once you go through get to Normoon, you learn that some vagabonds entered the town, and one of them absconded with the Wind Jade. And so you must now go into the forest into the Windward Forest through Normoon, and go through and finally meet this foul vagabond named Zels. I believe that's his name. Zels. So after another intense magic battle, you get the Wind Jade, which will now calm the winds down. But of course, the fairy can't move because the water's basically working against it. He wants to go north, so it's pushing him south, as strong as the wind can push him. Well, in Laurelpool, the sorceress in the town, the sorceress or mage in the town there, will lower the water level so you can enter the blue cave. This will allow you to get to the Crystal Valley, where a very powerful mage named Epona lives. Now, of course, you'll want to sidetrack a little bit when going through the cave, because one path will lead you to the exit is in Dundaran Flats, and which is in Glencoe Forest. The other path will, of course, lead you to the Crystal Valley. This is a good long area. And once you get to section 2, you're going to want to really get through this and not die, because if you die, you're back to the beginning. Of course, once you get through the cave, you enter the Crystal Valley, where Epona, an all-knowing seer / mage, is. And she will transport you to Loch Kildare, which will eventually let you get to the Isle of Skye, to a pirate ship that's basically also stranded there, and you get to talk with Colleen, who is another mage / sorceress, and she knows that the water jade's been stolen, and you need to go get it. And you'll go up to a stone circle, which will teleport you into an underwater area where you can breathe, where the foul Nepti is. She's the one who stole the water jewel. And of course, she wants to be acknowledged and have power over the waters. So again, another magical battle takes place, and you eventually beat her and get the water jade. And with that, you can now return back to Epona's cottage and travel back to Laurelpool, and then get on the ferry and finish your travels over to East Limeland, or to Limeland. You already have 3 of the gems. There's only one more to get, the Fire Ruby. Unfortunately, one of the roughest bandits in the area, Fargo, has absconded with it. Abscond is a fun word to say. Now you go to the city of Limeland, to where his prison had been, which they were somehow able to use magic to get out of there. Stole the fire gem. This is the pretty much the kingdom of merchants here, and you can tell by how lavish the town is, and the castle. And the acting ruler is Queen Diana. And of course, she will give you what she can to allow you to help on your mission. And then you also, when you talk with people in town, get basically the clue to head to the mines, which is south of the town, and Barragoon Tunnel. Now this is another long area, and it has a nice little area where you're running along a mine track to basically charge up. But when you get your way through this and what looks like ruins at the bottom of the mine, you run across another magical figure known as Shilf. There's a sheaf. Shilf. Now she has powers too. And, I remember the commercials. They put Shilf in the commercials, and, she was supposed to have a come hither figure. But she is your blockade in getting out of there, and she is in a room. This is going to be one of your first battles in an area that isn't flat out, round. Well, the floor is odd. And when you have battles, you get this ring, an octagonal ring, I should say, octagon. There's two of them. Well, the big one is your arena, which if you're fighting irregular monsters, you can actually escape from. Not so in boss battles. You can move within, of course, your own movement area. But of course, where you have a bunch of land that has gaping holes in it, yeah, you can't do that. This makes her battle a little bit trickier. Not impossible, but trickier. And once you get through that area, get through that fight, and get through the mine and the ruins, you come out in Dindum Dries, a desert area, which had a place called Greenock Village in it. And a desert where you can actually teleport to a beautiful place called Shamwood. Now, of course, Shamwood is optional, but I really would recommend going there because you can find tons of treasures and meet a figure there named Lavar. Lavar was actually a sorcerer, and he had dared to tame the magic of the Eltale book, but he was overcome by it and imprisoned by Epona to this pyramid in this area to atone for his crimes. He's going to be a good source of knowledge, plain and simple. And this area is going to be a good source of treasures and spirit elements. Yeah, spirit elements. You find them all over. Look like bubbles rising out of the ground. One of the ways you can build up your magic powers. The others is by using magic in battle and such. And of course, you will then head over to the village and find out it was destroyed by the last kingdom because the king's gotten very warlike. However, to get to that kingdom, you must go through a dangerous area known as the Boil Hole. Yeah, a lot of lava there. And at the far end, Fargo. Yep. The big nasty fire user. So, you're going to have a doozy of a battle with him. And once you beat him, you get the fire ruby, and you can head out of the Boil Hole into Barragood Moor. and Brannock, the kingdom of Brannock. And you can already tell this is a bleak place. Homes, people are hiding so they don't get dragged into the army. He has set up massive cannons in his own town. I mean, he could level his own town. And so you got to head through the town and get up to Brannock Castle. Of course, once you get into Brannock Castle, it's pretty straightforward. And you must work your way through, meeting up other people and give you more exposition, and even meeting a nasty fellow by the name of Guilty. And you learn that Guilty and someone else came and offered the king, Beegis, power. In fact, this other person was a woman named Shannon. And this was all as part of a task to get someone there to open up the Elltale book with the emblem, with the jewels, to free the evil inside it. So, of course, you have to fight Guilty. Then you have to fight King Beegis, who has another tough little area to maneuver in. And then you have to head up on top of the castle where the Elltale book is. You also find out, like I said, it was Shannon who gave him all this stuff. And so you open up the Elltale book and get transported to the monastery. Except now it's in the sky. And the inside of the place has become very surreal. And of course you have to work your way through some areas, some with tough battles, some that let you, run and build up your magic again. You even come across Epona with your final save point, before you eventually reach Mammon himself. And you must now fight Mammon. And this is the largest foe you're going to fight in the game. And there are about 2 ways to go about this. You could, of course, try and get close to Mammon and pound away at him, but my favorite has been to avalanche him to death. Avalanche, big boulders, each one can do about 50 to 60 damage at a time. So the more that hit him, the more damage it does. He's also got some nasty spells. So I also find Magic Barrier helps. This way you can withstand his attacks and attack him. And when you finally beat Mammon and put him to rest, your adventure and story are complete. Shannon doesn't fade because she wasn't a full puppet or something. She thought she was. So now she has a life to live. And Brian and everything would return to normal. Peace would reign over Keltland again. And that is it. This game was ambitious. I mean, the story is rather on the simple side, but and everything is fine again. Now, I mean, the story was simple. A very good first attempt for an RPG made in America. It's got the epic quest look. A very clever fighting system. because it could be quite easy for Brian to get overwhelmed. Plain and simple, he can, especially early on, well, even later. But they did the fighting system, of course, the two octagons. But to add to it, they had the fight system worked like this: Brian, foe, 1. Brian, foe, 2. Brian, foe, 3. Brian, foe, 4. And so on, circling around. I mean, let's face it, if it was just one person versus. And you could have up to 5, 6 foes up against you at once. And, if they're going to shoot out spells that's going to do 20 health points, and Brian starts the game with like 30, you need all the help you can get. And of course, you level things up by using them. How you build up your health? Get hit. How you build up your strength? Attack with the staff. Build up your magic? Use magic. Evade? Move. All this builds up your stats. And you build up your magic also, you can get an element after a while. There are 2 ways to build up your magic element stats, and that is to find spirits or earn them in battle. Well, by battling, I should say. The game had a basic day-night cycle that we would then see in like Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, and future games. You could even It had nice music and even nice little sound effects. You're close to a shore if you hear when the water rushing up against the surf. And well, I'm not necessarily a fan of remakes or demakes. The demake of this, which is Quest RPG on Brian's Journey on the Game Boy Color, actually did improve some things and kept some of the tactics the same. This is a good little game, and I would definitely recommend it for people who like this. I mean, this one helped me out when it came out. I mean, I traded in about 4 games just to get this one when it came out. And at the time, I was going through some high stress just starting out in life. So it was a help. That's why it's always got like a special place in my heart. And that's all I'm going to say about Quest 64. Like I said, it's a good game, nicely well done. I would definitely recommend playing it maybe once just to experience it. If you don't want to play it again, that's fine. A little bit shame that didn't get a sequel, because I would have liked to see more story with this. But that's all I'm going to say about Quest 64. I hope you enjoyed hearing me sort of reminisce about it. And until next time, take care and have fun. Bye.